The dust swirled across the barren street as Madeline Dawson stumbled into Oro Blanco, Arizona territory, her weathered boots dragging through the dirt as she clutched a twin to each hip. The sun beat down mercilessly, turning her faded blue dress dark with sweat along her back, but she kept her chin high despite the hollow ache in her stomach that matched the emptiness of her pockets. The year was 1878, and the mining town before her represented her last hope, a place she'd never been, filled with people she'd never met, but somewhere she might finally escape the shadows that had chased her west. "Mama, I'm thirsty," whispered Eliza, the smaller of her 5-year-old daughters, her copper-colored curls sticking to her forehead in damp ringlets. "Just a little further, sweetheart," Madeline promised, shifting Emma to her other hip. Both girls were getting too big to carry, but they'd walked miles already, and their little legs had given out hours ago. "We'll find water soon." The town of Oro Blanco wasn't much to look at, a single dusty main street lined with wooden buildings in various states of disrepair. A saloon, a general store, what looked to be a small hotel, and a few other establishments dotted the landscape. Despite the midday hour, few people milled about, most likely taking shelter from the punishing summer heat. Madeline set the girls down in the shadow of the general store's awning. "Stay right here," she instructed, smoothing down their matching dresses, once fine garments now faded and patched. "Mama's going to see if there's work to be had." "But we're hungry," Emma said, her blue eyes so like Madeline's own, wide with exhaustion. "I know, darling, I know." Madeline knelt down, ignoring the pain in her knees and the gnawing in her own belly. "Just a little while longer, I promise." She hadn't eaten in 2 days, saving the last scraps of bread for her daughters. The stage had dropped them 3 miles outside of town after she'd spent her final coins on the fare. 3 miles of carrying twins in the Arizona heat had nearly broken her. But Madeline Dawson was not a woman who broke easily. As she straightened, brushing dust from her skirt in a futile attempt to look presentable, the general store's door swung open. A tall man stepped out, his hat pulled low over his eyes, but not low enough to hide the sharp appraisal in his gaze as it swept over her and the girls. "You look like you could use some water," he said, his voice deep and steady. Madeline stiffened, pride battling with necessity. "We're fine, thank you," she replied, even as Eliza and Emma stared up at the man with undisguised hope, his mouth curved slightly beneath his mustache. "I don't believe you are, madam." He tipped his hat back, revealing a tanned face weathered by sun and wind, with eyes the color of the Arizona sky. "Name's Wade Jennings. I own the ranch just outside town, and those little ladies look mighty thirsty to me." Before Madeline could protest further, he turned and called back into the store. "Tom, bring out 3 cups of water, would you? And maybe some of those cookies Mrs. Peterson brought in this morning." Madeline's cheeks burned with embarrassment. "Mr. Jennings, we don't need charity." "It's not charity to help a neighbor," he replied, his eyes holding her steadily. "And anyone who walks into Oro Blanco is a neighbor, even if just passing through." A young man appeared with 3 tin cups of water and a small paper bag. Wade Jennings took them, nodding his thanks, and handed a cup to each of the girls before offering the third to Madeline. "Drink," he said softly. "Then we can talk about why you've come to a place like this with 2 little ones and nothing but the clothes on your backs." Madeline's hand trembled as she accepted the water, her throat suddenly tight with emotions she couldn't afford to show. "How do you know we have nothing else?" Wade Jennings smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes and softened the hard lines of his face. "Madam, I've been reading people since before the war, and you're carrying everything you own in those eyes of yours." He turned to the twins, who had already drained their cups and were eyeing the paper bag with undisguised interest. "Now, how about those cookies while your mama and I have a chat?" And just like that, with water, cookies, and unexpected kindness, Madeline's life in Oro Blanco began. Wade Jennings led Madeline and the twins to a small cafe tucked between the general store and the telegraph office. The proprietor, a stout woman with gray streaked black hair, greeted Wade with familiar warmth. "Mr. Jennings, haven't seen you in town for a spell. Your usual?" she asked, her curious gaze drifting to Madeline and the girls. "Thank you, Mrs. Flores. And whatever the lady and her daughters would like." He gestured to a corner table, away from the few other patrons. Madeline hesitated, her pride still battling with her empty stomach and the desperate needs of her children. "Mr. Jennings, I appreciate the water, but I can't accept more. I came here to find work, not handouts." Wade pulled out a chair for her. "And I respect that, Miss Dawson, Madeline Dawson." She corrected him automatically, watching as the twins climbed onto the chairs, their small feet dangling above the floor. "These are my daughters, Emma and Eliza." He nodded to each girl with the same respect he'd shown Madeline. "Pleasure to meet you both. Now, Miss Dawson, this isn't a handout. Consider it an advance on wages." "Wages?" Madeline sat straighter. "You're offering me work, I might be." He settled into his chair, removing his hat and placing it on the table. His hair was the dark brown of coffee, with strands of silver at the temples. "That depends on what you can do." Mrs. Flores approached with a pot of coffee and 2 cups. "What'll it be for the little ones?" "Milk, please," Madeline said. "And whatever is simplest for a meal." "The stew is fresh today," Mrs. Flores offered. "Made it this morning." Wade nodded. 3 bowls of stew, some bread, and maybe some of that apple pie I smell." After Mrs. Flores left, Madeline leaned forward. "Mr. Jennings, what kind of work are you offering?" "I should tell you I won't." "Nothing improper," he interrupted, his expression suddenly serious. "I run the Silver Creek Ranch about 5 miles west of town. My housekeeper, Mrs. Hayes, is getting on in years and has been asking for help. I need someone who can cook, clean, and help manage the household." Madeline studied him, searching for deception. She'd learned the hard way that men's offers often came with hidden expectations. "And what would this position pay?" "Room and board for you and your daughters, plus $20 a month." It was more than fair, generous even, but Madeline couldn't help her suspicion. Why would you offer such a position to a woman you've just met? A woman with 2 children, no less. Wade poured coffee for them both, his movements deliberate. "Because good help is hard to find out here, Miss Dawson. And because those little girls remind me that not everyone has had the advantages I've been fortunate enough to have." The food arrived before Madeline could respond. The rich aroma of beef stew made her mouth water, but she waited until the girls had been served before picking up her own spoon. They ate with the quiet concentration of the truly hungry, and Madeline felt both gratitude and shame wash over her as she watched them. "Where have you come from?" Wade asked, breaking the silence. Madeline hesitated. "St. Louis most recently." "That's a long journey." "Yes." She didn't elaborate, and something in her expression must have warned him not to press. "And their father," her hand tightened around her spoon. "Not in the picture." Wade nodded, accepting this without judgment. "Oro Blanco isn't much, but it's growing. The silver mines have brought in steady work. Most folks here are decent, hard-working people." "And you, Mr. Jennings, how long have you been here?" "Came west after the war. Bought land cheap when nobody wanted it. Turns out the soil's good for cattle if you know how to manage water." He sipped his coffee. "Built the ranch from nothing. Now I run 300 head of cattle with 6 ranch hands." As they ate, Wade told her more about the town and his ranch. the easy way he talked with the twins, drawing shy smiles from them with simple questions about their favorite colors and animals, gradually eased Madeline's wariness. By the time they'd finished the apple pie, the first sweet thing the girls had tasted in months, Madeline had made her decision. "I accept your offer, Mr. Jennings, on a trial basis." Wade smiled, crow's feet crinkling at the corners of his eyes. "Fair enough. We'll ride out to the ranch tomorrow morning. Tonight, you and the girls can stay at Mrs. Peterson's boarding house. I'll arrange it." "I can't let you pay for it'll come out of your first month's wages," he said smoothly, leaving no room for argument. "And tomorrow, we'll stop at Goldstein's store for some necessities, also against wages." Madeline met his gaze, recognizing the kindness he was wrapping in business terms to spare her pride. "Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Wade," he corrected. "If you're going to be working in my home, you might as well use my name." "Wade," she repeated, testing the feel of it. "Then you must call me Madeline." For the first time since stepping off the stage, Madeline felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps Oro Blanco would indeed offer the fresh start she so desperately needed. Mrs. Peterson's boarding house was a two-story structure with a wrap-around porch and lace curtains in the windows, a touch of gentility that seemed out of place in the frontier town. The elderly woman who greeted them had kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner that Madeline immediately appreciated. "So these are the little ones," Mrs. Peterson said, bending slightly to look at Emma and Eliza. "Twins! What a blessing! And identical too." "Yes, madam," Madeline replied. "Though their personalities couldn't be more different, as it should be," Mrs. Peterson said with a nod. "Now, I've got a room upstairs with a good-sized bed for you all. Washrooms at the end of the hall. Breakfast is at 7 sharp." Wade settled the arrangements with Mrs. Peterson while Madeline took the girls upstairs. The room was small but clean, with a double bed covered in a handmade quilt, a washstand with a porcelain basin, and a small window overlooking the main street. After the long journey sleeping on the hard ground or crowded into stage coaches, it looked like paradise. "Is this our new home, Mama?" Emma asked, running her hand over the quilt. "No, sweetheart, this is just for tonight. Tomorrow we're going to Mr. Jennings's ranch where Mama will be working." Madeline sat on the edge of the bed, gathering both girls close. "And you'll have your own room there. Will there be horses?" Eliza asked, her eyes wide. Madeline smiled. "I imagine so. It is a ranch, after all." When Wade knocked on the door to say goodbye, promising to return at 8 the next morning, Madeline thanked him again. Something in her voice must have conveyed her deeper gratitude, because his expression softened. "Get some rest," he said. "The ranch is nothing fancy, but it's peaceful. Good place for children." After he left, Madeline helped the girls wash up using the pitcher of water Mrs. Peterson had provided. They changed into their nightgowns, the only other clothing they owned besides their day dresses, and crawled into bed together. Within minutes, exhausted from the journey and with full bellies for the first time in days, the twins were asleep. Madeline stood by the window, looking out at the darkening street of Oro Blanco. The town was coming alive in a different way now, with men heading toward the saloon and lamps being lit in various windows. She thought about Wade Jennings, his weathered face, his straightforward manner, the way he'd spoken to her girls with respect rather than condescension. She didn't trust easily anymore, not after everything. But she needed this job, needed the security it would provide for her daughters. And there had been something in Wade's eyes, a steadiness, an honesty that made her want to believe in his offer. Madeline touched the small locket around her neck, the only valuable she'd kept through all their hardships. Inside was a tiny photograph of the twins as infants, before everything had fallen apart. before she'd been forced to flee St. Louis with nothing but her daughters and the clothes on their backs. "We'll be all right," she whispered to the sleeping girls. "This time, we'll be all right." The morning brought clear skies and renewed determination. Mrs. Peterson provided a hearty breakfast of eggs, bacon, and biscuits with honey, which the twins devoured enthusiastically. Madeline ate more moderately, conscious that soon she would be earning her keep. Wade arrived exactly at 8, driving a wagon rather than riding horseback. "Thought this would be easier with the little ones," he explained as he helped them climb aboard. A small trunk was already loaded in the back. "We'll stop at Goldstein's first, like I promised." Goldstein's general store was larger than it had appeared from the outside, stocked with everything from food supplies to clothing, tools, and household goods. The proprietor, a balding man with spectacles, greeted Wade warmly. "Mr. Jennings, good to see you again so soon." "Morning, Abe. Need to outfit Miss Dawson and her daughters here. They'll be working out at Silver Creek." Mr. Goldstein's eyes lit up with interest as he looked at Madeline and the twins. "Is that so? Well, welcome to Oro Blanco, ladies. What can I help you with today?" Wade stepped back, allowing Madeline to speak for herself. "We need some basic clothing. Work dresses for me, play clothes for the girls, and personal items." She felt her cheeks warm slightly. Of course, Mrs. Goldstein can help with that." He called for his wife, a plump woman with a kind smile who emerged from the back of the store, while Mrs. Goldstein helped Madeline select necessities for herself and the girls. Wade wandered through the store, occasionally adding items to the growing pile on the counter: a jar of hard candies, 2 small rag dolls, a picture book. "Mr. Jennings," Madeline protested quietly when she noticed, "that's not necessary." "Children need toys," he said simply, "and books. My mother was a school teacher. She'd never forgive me if I didn't provide something for their education." The total came to more than Madeline had expected, and she worried about how long it would take to work off this debt. As if reading her thoughts, Wade said, 2 weeks' wages should cover it." "Fair," she nodded, knowing it was more than fair. 3 sturdy work dresses, 2 everyday dresses for each of the girls, plus undergarments, nightgowns, a hairbrush, soap, and other necessities would have cost far more than 2 weeks of the generous salary he'd offered. Their next stop was the small clinic on the edge of town, where Wade introduced Madeline to the town's doctor, a surprisingly young man named Dr. Thompson. "Just want to make sure everyone's healthy before we head out to the ranch," Wade explained. "It's a ways from town if something were to happen." Dr. Thompson examined the girls first, pronouncing them healthy but slightly underweight. "Good nutrition will take care of that," he said with a kind smile. When it was Madeline's turn, he noted the same, plus signs of exhaustion. "Rest and regular meals," he prescribed. "You've been through a difficult journey by the looks of it." Back in the wagon, heading west out of town, Madeline found her curiosity growing about the man beside her. "You seem to know everyone in Oro Blanco," she observed. Wade kept his eyes on the road. "Small town, and I do business with most of them. Cattle ranch needs supplies and folks need beef." "Have you always been a rancher?" He shook his head. "Grew up in Tennessee. My father had a small farm, joined the Union Army in '61, fought until Appomattox. Came west afterward like many did. Tried mining first, then cowboying. Saved enough to buy my own land in '70. The war." Madeline hesitated. "Was it very terrible?" A shadow passed over his face. "War is always terrible, Madeline, but it's in the past now." He glanced at the twins, who were playing with their new dolls in the back of the wagon. "The future is what matters." The road took them through scrubby desert dotted with saguaro cacti and mesquite, gradually climbing into rolling hills covered with grass and oak trees. The landscape was beautiful in its harsh way, so different from the lush greenery of Missouri where Madeline had grown up. "There it is," Wade said finally, pointing toward a cluster of buildings nestled in a valley. A creek, surprisingly full for the dry season, wound through the property. Silver Creek Ranch. As they drew closer, Madeline could make out the main house, a substantial two-story structure built of stone and wood, several outbuildings, corrals with horses, and in the distance, the dark shapes of cattle grazing on the hillsides. It was larger and more established than she had expected. "It's beautiful," she said sincerely. Wade's expression softened with pride. "Built the house myself with help from the hands. Took 2 years. The first winter we all lived in the bunkhouse." He nodded toward a long, low building set apart from the main house. "That's where the ranch hands stay now. 6 of them currently, though we hire more during roundup." A woman emerged from the main house as they pulled up, tall, gray-haired, with an apron tied around her substantial waist. "Mrs. Hayes," Wade called out. "Come meet Miss Dawson and her daughters." Mrs. Hayes approached, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes were shrewd as they took in Madeline and the twins, but not unkind. "So you're the help Mr. Jennings rode off to find yesterday. Welcome to Silver Creek." She bent slightly to address the girls. "And who might you 2 young ladies be?" "I'm Emma," said the bolder of the twins. "And I'm Eliza," added her sister, staying close to Madeline's skirts. Mrs. Hayes nodded approvingly. "Well, aren't you both pretty as pictures? I've got some fresh baked cookies in the kitchen if your mama says it's all right." Madeline smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Mrs. Hayes. That would be lovely." As the girls followed Mrs. Hayes inside, she turned to Wade. "She seems kind. Best cook in the territory and runs the house like a general. You'll learn a lot from her." Wade lifted the trunk from the wagon. "She's getting on in years, though. Her joints pain her in the winter and the stairs have become difficult. That's why I need help." Inside, the house was surprisingly elegant for a bachelor's residence. The furniture was solid and well made, the floors covered with colorful rugs, and the walls adorned with a few paintings, landscapes mostly, but also a portrait of an older couple Madeline guessed were Wade's parents. "Mrs. Hayes lives in a room off the kitchen," Wade explained, carrying the trunk upstairs. "You and the girls will have the room at the end of the hall. Mine is downstairs, and there are 2 guest rooms up here as well." The bedroom he showed them was large and airy, with a double bed, a small trundle that could be pulled out for the girls, a wardrobe, and a washstand. Windows overlooked the creek and the rolling hills beyond. "This is more than I expected," Madeline admitted, taking in the clean, comfortable space. Wade set down the trunk. "Everyone deserves a decent place to sleep." He hesitated, then added, "My mother would have haunted me if I'd put you in anything less." There was something in the way he spoke of his mother, a gentleness, a respect that touched Madeline. "She sounds like she was a remarkable woman." "She was." He cleared his throat. "I'll let you get settled. Mrs. Hayes will show you around the kitchen and explain your duties. Supper's at 6. After he left, Madeline sat on the edge of the bed, running her hand over the clean quilt. The room was simple but comfortable, with curtains at the windows and a small vase of wildflowers on the dresser. Mrs. Hayes's touch, she guessed. For the first time in months, Madeline felt the tight knot of anxiety in her chest begin to loosen. They were safe. They had shelter, food, and the promise of stability. It might not last. Nothing in her life had lasted, but for now, it was enough. She unpacked their meager belongings, hanging the new dresses in the wardrobe. The trunk Wade had provided contained some additional surprises: a sewing kit, hair ribbons for the girls, a small bottle of lavender water. thoughtful touches that brought unexpected tears to her eyes. When she went downstairs to find the twins, she discovered them in the kitchen with Mrs. Hayes, perched on stools at the large wooden table, helping to roll out dough for biscuits. Their faces were dusted with flour, and they were giggling as Mrs. Hayes told them a story about a mischievous raccoon that had once broken into the smokehouse. "There you are," Mrs. Hayes said, looking up. "These two are natural bakers, might put me out of a job soon." Madeline smiled. "I doubt that. Something smells wonderful. Beef stew for tonight." The hands work hard, and Mr. Jennings believes in feeding them well. Mrs. Hayes wiped her hands on her apron. "Now, let me show you around while these biscuits bake." The kitchen was large and well equipped, with a substantial wood-burning stove, ample workspace, and a pantry stocked with flour, sugar, coffee, canned goods, and other staples. Off the kitchen was a small dining room where Mrs. Hayes and Madeline would take their meals with the girls, while Wade ate in the larger dining room, often with his foreman or visitors from town. "The hands eat in the bunkhouse," Mrs. Hayes explained. "I prepare their meals and one of them comes to fetch them. Your duties will include helping with all the cooking, cleaning the main house, laundry, and generally keeping things in order. Mr. Jennings is not demanding, but he likes things neat." Madeline nodded, taking mental notes. "And the girls, where will they be while I'm working?" "They can help with simple tasks, or play in the yard where you can see them from the kitchen window." Mr. Jennings mentioned setting up a small schoolroom in one of the unused bedrooms. He values education highly. This aligned with what Wade had said earlier about his mother being a teacher. "That's very considerate of him." Mrs. Hayes gave her a shrewd look. "Mr. Jennings is a good man, Miss Dawson, better than most. He built this place from nothing through hard work and fair dealing. The hands respect him, and that's saying something in these parts." "I'm grateful for the opportunity," Madeline said carefully. "As you should be." Mrs. Hayes's tone softened. "Life isn't easy for a woman alone with children. I should know my Thomas died of the fever when our boys were small." She glanced toward the twins, who were now exploring the pantry under the watchful eye of the ranch's tabby cat. "But those little ones will thrive here. Fresh air, good food, and safety. That's what children need most, safety." The word echoed in Madeline's mind as she followed Mrs. Hayes through the rest of the house. It was what she'd been seeking since fleeing St. Louis, a place where she could sleep without fear, where her daughters could grow up without the shadows that had haunted their early years. Silver Creek Ranch, with its solid stone walls and the steady presence of Wade Jennings, felt safer than anywhere she'd been in a very long time. The next few weeks established a rhythm to life at Silver Creek Ranch. Madeline rose before dawn to help Mrs. Hayes prepare breakfast first for Wade and then for the ranch hands. The twins would wake later, eating their own breakfast in the kitchen before finding ways to entertain themselves while Madeline worked. Wade had been true to his word about creating a schoolroom. The smallest of the upstairs bedrooms had been converted with a small desk, a bookshelf filled with primers and readers, and a slate board on the wall. Each afternoon, Madeline spent an hour teaching the girls their letters and numbers, skills they'd had little opportunity to learn during their months of travel. To her surprise, Wade often stopped by during these lessons, sometimes bringing a new book or offering to listen to the girls practice their reading. He was patient with them, gently correcting without criticism, and the twins quickly lost their initial shyness around him. "You're good with children," Madeline observed one evening in late September as they sat on the porch after supper. The twins were catching fireflies in the yard, their delighted laughter carrying on the cooling air. Wade watched them with a small smile. "Children are easier than adults," They say what they mean and mean what they say. Did you ever want children of your own? The question slipped out before Madeline could consider its propriety. If Wade was surprised by her boldness, he didn't show it. Yes, but the war came, and afterward. Well, the right opportunity never arose. He turned to look at her directly. What about you, Madeline? How did you come to be raising twins alone? She tensed, her hands folding tightly in her lap. Their father is dead. It wasn't entirely a lie. Wade seemed to sense her reluctance. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pry into painful memories. No, it's all right. Madeline took a deep breath. Wade had been nothing but kind to her and the girls. He deserved some truth, if not the whole of it. I was young when I married, just 17. Charles was older, established in business in St. Louis. When I discovered I was carrying twins, he seemed pleased, but after they were born. She paused, choosing her words carefully. He changed, became cruel. He died when the girls were 3. It was the story she'd constructed, the one she told when necessary. Close enough to truth to be believable, distant enough from reality to keep them safe. Wade didn't press for details. The world can be unkind to widows, especially those with children to support. Yes. Madeline watched as Emma helped Eliza climb onto a large rock, the two of them searching the darkening sky for the first stars. But we've been fortunate since coming here. And Oro Blanco is fortunate to have you. Wade's voice was warm, and when Madeline glanced at him, she found him watching her with an expression that made her heart beat a little faster. Dangerous, she warned herself. Don't mistake kindness for something more. Yet as the weeks passed, Madeline found herself looking forward to these evening conversations. Wade was well-read and thoughtful, with strong opinions about politics and the development of the territory, but he listened to her views with genuine interest. He told her stories about the early days of the ranch, about cattle drives and the characters he'd encountered in his years out west. In turn, she shared sanitized versions of her childhood in Missouri, her love of literature, her hopes for her daughter's education. By November, Madeline had fully assumed her duties at the ranch. Mrs. Hayes still supervised the cooking, but her arthritis had worsened with the cooler weather, and she was grateful to have Madeline handle more of the physical work. The arrangement suited them both. Mrs. Hayes was a patient teacher, and Madeline was eager to learn everything from how to manage the smokehouse to preserving the last of the garden's harvest for winter. The twins thrived in their new environment. Their cheeks grew rosy with health, their thin limbs filling out with regular meals. They followed Wade around whenever he was near the house, peppering him with questions about the cattle, the horses, the distant mountains. He always answered patiently, often lifting one or both onto his shoulders to give them a better view of whatever had caught their interest. One crisp morning, Madeline was hanging laundry in the yard when she heard Emma's excited voice from the corral. "Mama, look, Mr. Wade says we can ride." Alarmed, Madeline hurried toward the corral, where Wade was leading a gentle-looking pony with both twins perched on its back, their small hands clutching its mane. "Wade," she called out, worry sharpening her tone. "They're too young for horseback riding." He looked up, surprised by her concern. "They're perfectly safe, Madeline. Old Bess here is gentler than a rocking chair, and I'm leading her. Every child in the West learns to ride early." "Please, Mama," Eliza begged, her usual timidity forgotten in the excitement of her first ride. "Mr. Wade won't let us fall." Madeline hesitated, torn between her instinctive caution and the joy on her daughter's faces. "You'll hold on to them, not let go of the pony, I promise," Wade said solemnly. "Just once around the corral, then back to their lessons." Reluctantly, Madeline nodded, watching anxiously as Wade led the pony in a slow circle. The twins bounced slightly with each step, giggling with delight. When they completed the circuit and Wade lifted them down, they ran to Madeline, talking over each other in their excitement. "Did you see, Mama? I was riding a real pony. Her name is Bess and she's 20 years old and she likes apples," Madeline laughed, kneeling to embrace them. "I saw. You were very brave, both of you." Wade approached, hat in hand. "I should have asked you first, I apologize." His contrition softened her initial alarm. "No, you're right. Children here do learn to ride young. I'm just not used to the ways of the West yet." "You're a protective mother, that's as it should be." He replaced his hat. "But if you approve, I'd like to give them regular lessons. Short ones always supervised. It's an important skill out here." Madeline looked at her daughters, their faces still flushed with excitement. "All right, but I want to learn too." Wade's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You've never ridden?" "Not since I was a child, and only side saddle then, as was proper for young ladies in Missouri." She straightened her shoulders. "But I'm not in Missouri anymore, and I think it's a skill I should have as well." A slow smile spread across Wade's face. "I'd be honored to teach you, Madeline. We'll start tomorrow, if Mrs. Hayes can spare you for an hour after breakfast." As he walked away to tend to his other duties, Madeline found herself watching the confident set of his shoulders, the easy grace of his stride. There was something comforting about Wade Jennings, a steadiness, a reliability that she'd never known in a man before. It was dangerous to notice such things, dangerous to feel the warmth that spread through her when he smiled, or to look forward to their evening conversations on the porch. Dangerous, but increasingly difficult to ignore. December brought cooler temperatures to Oro Blanco, though nothing like the harsh winters Madeline had known in Missouri. The mountains to the north were capped with snow, but the ranch remained relatively mild, with occasional cold rains that turned the creek higher and faster. Christmas approached, bringing with it a sense of anticipation. The twins, who had known only meager celebrations in the past, were enchanted by Mrs. Hayes's descriptions of the feasts and traditions to come. "Mr. Jennings always has a proper Christmas," Mrs. Hayes told them as they helped her cut out gingerbread cookies. A tree brought down from the mountains, decorations, gifts for everyone on the ranch. His mother started the tradition, and he's kept it up ever since. Madeline, kneading bread dough nearby, felt a familiar twist of anxiety. She had nothing to give her daughters for Christmas, let alone a gift for Wade, who had been so generous. Though she'd been earning wages for nearly 3 months, most had gone to repay the initial debt for their clothing and supplies, with the remainder set aside for an uncertain future. That evening, after the twins were asleep, she approached Wade in his study, where he was reviewing the ranch's accounts. "I was wondering," she began hesitantly, "if there might be extra work I could do, to earn a bit more before Christmas." Wade looked up, setting aside his pencil. "Is something wrong with our arrangement, Madeline?" "No, not at all," she hastened to assure him. "You've been more than fair. It's just, the girls have never had a proper Christmas, and I'd like to be able to get them something special, and to repay some of your kindness." His expression softened. "You don't need to work extra hours. The girls will have presents. I've already arranged it." "Wade, I can't let you." "You can and you will," he interrupted gently. "Christmas is for children. Let them enjoy it without worry about the cost." He hesitated, then added, "My own childhood Christmases were modest but joyful because my mother made them so. I'd like Emma and Eliza to have those same happy memories." Madeline felt tears prick her eyes. "You're too generous." "Not at all." Wade stood, moving around the desk to stand before her. "Madeline, this ranch has prospered beyond my expectations. Sharing that good fortune isn't generosity, it's simple decency." She looked up at him, suddenly aware of how close he stood. In the lamplight, his eyes were warm, his expression open in a way she rarely saw during daylight hours. "Still," she said softly, "I'd like to give you something in return, something made by my hands at least." Wade's gaze held hers for a long moment. "Your presence here, yours and the girls, has brought life back to this house. That's gift enough." Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition, perhaps, of feelings that had been growing since that first day in Oro Blanco. Madeline felt it like a physical thing, this connection that had formed so gradually she hadn't noticed until it was already strong and steady. Before either could speak again, a crack of thunder broke the silence, followed by the sudden drumming of heavy rain on the roof. "Storms here earlier than expected," Wade said, stepping back. "Might be a rough night." The moment passed, but Madeline carried the warmth of it with her as she checked on the twins before retiring to her own bed. Outside, the storm raged, but inside the solid walls of Silver Creek Ranch, she felt safe, protected feelings she'd almost forgotten were possible. In the middle of the night, Madeline woke to the sound of frightened whimpering. Eliza stood by her bed, tears streaking her small face. "What is it, sweetheart?" Madeline asked, immediately alert. "The thunder is scary," Eliza whispered, "and Emma won't wake up." Madeline frowned, rising quickly to check on her other daughter. Emma lay unnaturally still in the trundle bed, her forehead burning with fever. "Emma, Emma, can you hear me?" Madeline called, her heart racing with sudden fear. The child's eyes fluttered open, glassy and unfocused. "Mama." "I don't feel good." Panic rose in Madeline's throat. She'd seen fever take children before, swiftly, mercilessly. "Eliza, stay with your sister. I'm going to get help." She hurried downstairs in her nightgown, a shawl hastily thrown over her shoulders. The rain hammered against the windows as she made her way to Wade's room, knocking urgently. He answered immediately, as if he hadn't been asleep at all, wearing trousers and an undershirt. "Madeline, what's wrong?" "It's Emma. She's burning with fever." Madeline's voice shook. "We need the doctor." Wade didn't hesitate. "I'll ride into town. Stay with her, keep her cool if you can. There's willow bark tea in Mrs. Hayes's medicinal supplies. It might help bring down the fever." Within minutes, he was dressed and heading for the stable, while Madeline woke Mrs. Hayes, and together they tended to Emma. The child's condition worsened rapidly, her breathing becoming labored, her small body alternating between chills and burning heat. Mrs. Hayes prepared the willow bark tea while Madeline bathed Emma's forehead with cool water. Eliza sat in the corner, her eyes wide with fear as she watched her twins struggle. "My girls have never been separated," Madeline murmured to Mrs. Hayes. "Not even for a day. If Emma—" She couldn't finish the thought. "Don't borrow trouble," Mrs. Hayes advised firmly. "The child is strong, and Mr. Jennings will bring Dr. Thompson." The storm made the hours feel endless. Madeline sang softly to Emma, told her stories, anything to keep her connected to the world as the fever raged. Dawn was breaking when they finally heard hoofbeats in the yard. Wade entered first, soaked to the skin, followed by a younger man carrying a medical bag, Dr. Thompson, whom Madeline had met briefly during their stop at the clinic months earlier. "How long has she been like this?" the doctor asked, immediately taking charge. "Since sometime in the night," Madeline replied, stepping back to give him room. "The fever came on suddenly." Dr. Thompson examined Emma thoroughly, his expression grave. "It's pneumonia, brought on by a chest cold most likely. Children can sicken very quickly." "Will she?" Madeline couldn't finish the question. "I've brought medicines that should help, but she'll need constant care." He looked up at Madeline. "The next 24 hours are critical." Wade, who had been standing silently in the doorway, stepped forward. "Whatever she needs, doctor." "Whatever it costs." Dr. Thompson nodded, unsurprised by Wade's declaration. I'll stay until the crisis passes. Mrs. Hayes, I'll need hot water and clean cloths." As the housekeeper hurried to comply, he turned to Madeline. "You should prepare yourself, Miss Dawson. This will be a difficult fight." The day passed in a blur of anxious vigilance. Dr. Thompson administered medicines, Madeline applied cool compresses, and Wade took charge of Eliza, keeping her occupied while ensuring she could visit her twin regularly. The child was confused and frightened, not understanding why Emma wouldn't play or even talk to her. "Why is Emma sleeping so much?" she asked Wade as he helped her feed the chickens, a task that usually delighted her. Wade knelt to her level. "Her body is fighting hard to get better, Eliza. Sleep helps her fight, but she knows you're nearby and that helps too. Are you sure?" Eliza's lower lip trembled. "I'm sure." Wade smoothed her copper curls gently. "You and your mama are the most important people in Emma's world. Your love makes her stronger." By nightfall, Emma's fever had risen even higher. She tossed restlessly, sometimes calling out in delirium. Madeline refused to leave her side, even when Mrs. Hayes urged her to rest. "I can't lose her," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "I can't." Wade, who had just brought fresh water, heard her. "You won't," he said quietly but with conviction. "Emma is a fighter like her mother." Madeline looked up at him, exhaustion and fear making her vulnerable. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've watched you since the day you walked into Oro Blanco." Wade sat beside her, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "You faced whatever life has thrown at you with courage and determination. Emma has that same spirit. I've seen it in how she explores, how she protects her sister, how she approaches every new experience with such enthusiasm." His words gave Madeline strength when she needed it most. Throughout the long night, as Emma's fever rose and fell, as Dr. Thompson's expression grew increasingly concerned, she held on to Wade's certainty. Near dawn, the crisis came. Emma's breathing became so labored that each breath seemed like it might be her last. Dr. Thompson administered a final dose of medicine, then shook his head grimly. "We've done all we can. Now it's in God's hands." Madeline gathered her daughter into her arms, rocking her gently as she had when Emma was a baby. "Fight, my love," she whispered against the child's hot forehead. "Please fight." The room was silent except for Emma's struggle for breath. Wade stood at the foot of the bed, his face haggard with concern. Mrs. Hayes prayed quietly in the corner. Eliza had finally fallen asleep in one of the armchairs, exhausted by fear and confusion. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows, Emma's breathing suddenly eased. The terrible rattling sound diminished, and her body, which had been rigid with fever, relaxed. Dr. Thompson moved quickly to examine her. "The fever's breaking," he announced, relief evident in his voice. "She's turning the corner." Madeline let out a sob, clutching Emma closer. "She'll recover." "Children are remarkably resilient," the doctor said, a smile finally breaking through his professional demeanor. "She'll need rest and care, but yes, I believe the worst has passed." Wade's hand came to rest on Madeline's shoulder, warm and steadying. When she looked up at him through tear-blurred eyes, the emotion on his face, relief, joy, something deeper she wasn't ready to name, mirrored her own feelings. "Thank you," she whispered, covering his hand with hers. "For everything." He shook his head slightly. "No thanks needed, not between us." The simple statement held a world of meaning that Madeline wasn't ready to examine. For now, it was enough that Emma would recover, that the family she'd fought so hard to protect remained whole. As Dr. Thompson had predicted, Emma's recovery was slow but steady. For the next week, Madeline divided her time between caring for her sick child and ensuring Eliza didn't feel neglected. Wade and Mrs. Hayes took on many of her duties, insisting she focus on the twins. Christmas approached, but with Emma still weak, Madeline assumed the celebrations would be subdued. To her surprise, Wade seemed more determined than ever to make the holiday special. "Children need joy," he said when she suggested postponing some of the festivities, especially after difficult times, and Emma is well enough to enjoy Christmas from her bed, if necessary. 2 days before Christmas, Wade and two of the ranch hands rode into the mountains, returning with a magnificent pine tree that filled the corner of the main parlor. The twins, Emma still wrapped in blankets but able to sit up and participate, helped Mrs. Hayes and Madeline decorate it with paper ornaments, strings of cranberries, and small candles in special holders. "It's the most beautiful tree in the whole world," Eliza declared, her eyes wide with wonder. "The whole universe," Emma agreed weakly from her chair, but with genuine delight. On Christmas Eve, the entire ranch gathered for a feast. The hands, usually fed separately, joined Wade, Madeline, Mrs. Hayes, and the twins at the extended dining table. Emma, still recovering but determined to participate, sat propped up with pillows, her eyes bright with excitement rather than fever. Wade carved a roasted turkey while Mrs. Hayes and Madeline brought out dish after dish: mashed potatoes, gravy, stuffing, cranberry preserves, fresh bread, and 3 different pies. The men, usually rough and reserved, were on their best behavior, complimenting the cooking and making the twins laugh with stories about the antics of young calves and colts. After dinner, Wade surprised everyone by producing a fiddle. "My father's," he explained as he tuned it. "Not much call for music out here most days, but Christmas is different." He played carols while everyone sang along, his fingers surprisingly nimble on the strings. Madeline, watching him with the warm glow of the fire highlighting his features, felt something shift in her heart. This man, who had taken in 3 strangers with nothing but the clothes on their backs, who had ridden through a storm to save her child, who now filled his home with music and laughter, he was unlike anyone she had ever known. Later, after the hands had returned to the bunkhouse and the twins were tucked into bed, their excitement about the morning's promised presents finally overcome by exhaustion, Madeline found Wade on the porch. Despite the chill, he stood looking out at the star-filled sky, the fiddle still in his hand. "That was beautiful," she said, joining him. "I didn't know you played." "Not well," he admitted with a small smile, "but well enough for Christmas carols. My father was the true musician in the family." The girls loved it. We all did. Madeline pulled her shawl tighter against the cold. "This has been. I don't have words for what you've given us, Wade." He turned to face her, his expression serious in the moonlight. "Madeline, there's something I need to tell you." He set the fiddle aside carefully. "When Emma was so ill, I realized life is uncertain and some things shouldn't go unsaid." Her heart quickened. "What things?" "These past months, watching you with your daughters, seeing your strength and your gentleness." He took a deep breath. "I've come to care for you deeply, more than I thought possible at this point in my life." Madeline stood very still, afraid to believe what she was hearing. "Wade, you don't need to respond," he continued quickly. "I know your past holds pain you're not ready to share. I know you came here seeking safety, not whatever this might be." He gestured between them. "But I wanted you to know that if you ever decide you want more than an employer-employee relationship, I would be honored to court you properly." The declaration hung between them in the cold night air. Madeline's mind raced with conflicting emotions: hope, fear, longing, caution. "I don't know what to say," she admitted finally. "Except that I care for you too, more than I should. More than is wise, perhaps." Wade took a step closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Why isn't it wise?" "Because my past is complicated. There are things you don't know, things that might change how you see me. Nothing could change what I feel, he said with quiet certainty, but I won't press you. Just know that when you're ready to share those complications, I'll be here to listen, without judgment. Madeline looked up at him, this man who had become the foundation of her new life. The moonlight silvered his features, highlighting the earnestness in his eyes. In that moment, she wanted nothing more than to step into his arms to accept the comfort and strength he offered, but caution held her back. "I need time," she whispered. Wade nodded, accepting this without protest. "Time you shall have, but may I ask one thing, of course? May I kiss you? Just once, to carry me through the waiting." The request was so gentle, so respectful, that Madeline found herself nodding before she could reconsider. Wade stepped closer, one hand coming up to cup her cheek. His touch was warm against her skin, slightly calloused from ranch work but infinitely tender. When his lips met hers, Madeline felt something inside her unfurl, a tightly closed bud finally feeling the warmth of spring. The kiss was brief but perfect, a promise rather than a demand. As he drew back, Wade smiled softly. "Merry Christmas, Madeline." "Merry Christmas, Wade," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. They stood together a moment longer, looking up at the stars before returning to the warmth of the house. Whatever tomorrow might bring, tonight had given Madeline a gift beyond price, hope for a future she had stopped believing possible. Christmas morning brought squeals of delight from the twins. Wade had arranged presents for everyone, dolls with china faces and real hair for the girls, a fine leather-bound journal for Madeline, practical gifts for Mrs. Hayes and all the ranch hands. Madeline had managed to make small gifts as well, embroidered handkerchiefs for the men, a knitted scarf for Mrs. Hayes, and for Wade, a hand-stitched leather case for his reading glasses. "It's perfect," he told her, genuinely touched by the simple gift. "Thank you." The day passed in a haze of happiness. Emma continued to improve, able to sit up for longer periods and even join them briefly at the dinner table. Eliza hardly left her twins' side, playing with their new dolls and chattering about everything Emma had missed during her illness. As January settled over the ranch with cooler temperatures and occasional rain, life returned to its normal rhythm. Madeline resumed her duties, though Wade insisted she continue to have time each day for the twins' lessons. Emma regained her strength gradually, and by the end of the month, Dr. Thompson declared her fully recovered. "She'll be more susceptible to chest ailments for a while," he warned Madeline during his final visit. "Keep her warm and well-fed and watch for any signs of coughing or fever." Madeline promised to be vigilant, relief washing over her. She had come too close to losing her daughter. She wouldn't take such risks again. The relationship between Madeline and Wade had shifted subtly since Christmas Eve. He hadn't pressed her for a response to his declaration, true to his promise to give her time. But there were small changes, his hand lingering when he helped her down from a horse, their evening conversations extending later into the night, the way his eyes sought hers across a room. February brought preparations for the spring cattle drive. Wade spent more time with his ranch hands, planning routes and discussing the condition of the herd after the winter months. Madeline missed their evening talks, but understood the demands of the ranch took priority. One evening, as Madeline was helping the twins with their bedtime routine, a knock came at the bedroom door. Wade stood there, looking unusually formal in a clean shirt and vest. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said, "but I wanted to invite you and the girls into town tomorrow. There's a traveling show passing through musicians, a small circus of sorts. I thought the twins might enjoy it." Emma and Eliza immediately began pleading with their mother, their eyes wide with excitement. "Please, Mama, a real circus. with animals and everything. Madeline laughed at their enthusiasm. How can I say no to such faces? Yes, we'd love to go. Thank you, Wade. His smile was warm. We'll leave after breakfast. Wear your best dresses. We'll make a day of it. After he left, the twins were too excited to settle easily for sleep. Madeline finally managed to calm them with promises of what tomorrow might bring, tucking them in with kisses and admonitions to sleep well. As she prepared for bed herself, Madeline found herself anticipating the outing with a flutter of excitement that had nothing to do with the circus and everything to do with the man who had invited them. She hadn't been to town since their arrival at the ranch nearly 6 months ago. The prospect of being seen with Wade, of being introduced to others as his housekeeper, his friend, something more, the uncertainty both thrilled and frightened her. In the month since Christmas, she had considered his words countless times. She cared for him deeply, that much she couldn't deny. But the secrets she kept, the reasons for her flight from St. Louis, still stood between them. Perhaps it was time to trust him with the truth. The thought came unbidden as she brushed her hair before the mirror. Wade had proven himself trustworthy in every way. If anyone deserved honesty, it was him. The next morning dawned clear and mild, a perfect February day in the Arizona Territory. Madeline dressed the twins in their best frocks, the ones Wade had purchased on their first day in Oro Blanco, now carefully altered to accommodate their growth. For herself, she chose her one good dress, dark blue with tiny white flowers, saved for Sundays and special occasions. Wade was waiting for them by the wagon, dressed in what Madeline recognized as his town clothes, a clean black suit, white shirt, and string tie. He helped the twins up onto the seat, then offered his hand to Madeline. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, his eyes warm with admiration. Madeline felt herself blush like a young girl. "Thank you. So do you, handsome, I mean." His smile deepened at her flustered response. "I've been looking forward to showing you all Oro Blanco properly. It's grown since you arrived, new buildings, new people. The silver mines have been producing well." The drive to town was filled with the twins' excited chatter. They'd seen little beyond the ranch since their arrival, and everything from a herd of pronghorn antelope to a hawk circling overhead warranted exclamation and questions. Oro Blanco had indeed changed in the months since Madeline had first stumbled into town. New storefronts lined the main street, the hotel had expanded, and there was even a small schoolhouse at the edge of town. The town council voted to hire a teacher last month, Wade explained as they drove past. "She'll arrive on the stage next week. Children in town will have formal education for the first time." "That's wonderful," Madeline said sincerely. "Every child deserves an education." "I thought perhaps, when the twins are a bit older, they might attend. It's not too far from the ranch and they'd benefit from being around other children." The suggestion touched Madeline. It spoke of permanence, of a future here in Oro Blanco that extended beyond her employment at Silver Creek Ranch. Wade parked the wagon in front of the hotel and helped them all down. "The show doesn't start until noon. I thought we might visit some shops first, have an early lunch at the hotel." The twins' eyes grew wide at the prospect of shopping. "Can we, Mama?" Emma asked, practically bouncing with excitement. "We'll see," Madeline said, conscious of her limited funds. She had saved most of her wages, but they were meant for emergencies, not frivolities. As if reading her thoughts, Wade leaned close. "This is my treat, Madeline. Please don't worry about the cost." She opened her mouth to protest, but the hopeful expressions on her daughters' faces made her reconsider. "Thank you," she said instead. "You're too generous." "Not at all." Wade offered his arm, a gesture that felt both courtly and intimate. After a moment's hesitation, Madeline placed her hand on his sleeve, and together they led the twins down the boardwalk. Their first stop was Goldstein's general store, where Mr. Goldstein greeted them warmly. "Mr. Jennings, Miss Dawson, and the little ladies too. How fine you all look today." Wade nodded politely. "The twins have outgrown their shoes, Abe. Thought we might find new ones for them." While Mr. Goldstein showed the girls various options, his wife appeared from the back of the store. "Miss Dawson, how good to see you again. We've just received some lovely fabrics from back east. Perhaps you'd like to see them." Madeline allowed herself to be led to a display of colorful cloth, admiring the fine cottons and calicos. "These are beautiful," she admitted, running her fingers over a soft blue fabric that reminded her of the sky over Silver Creek. "You should have a new dress made," Mrs. Goldstein suggested. "The dressmaker just opened a shop down the street. She does fine work." Before Madeline could decline, Wade joined them. "An excellent idea. Why don't you choose something you like, Madeline? Consider it a belated Christmas gift." "Wade, I couldn't, please," he said softly, for her ears alone. "It would give me pleasure to see you in something new and pretty." The sincerity in his eyes made refusal impossible. Madeline chose the blue fabric, along with some simpler cotton for new dresses for the twins. Wade insisted on paying for it all, arranging for the material to be delivered to the dressmaker for measurements later that day. As they continued down the street, Madeline was aware of curious glances from townspeople. Wade greeted many by name, introducing Madeline and the twins to each with a pride that suggested they were more than just his employees. "Wade is very well respected here," Mrs. Hayes had told her once. Now Madeline could see the truth of this in how people deferred to him, how they smiled and nodded, how men removed their hats when speaking to him. At the hotel dining room, they were given the best table by the window. The twins, on their best behavior, marveled at the white tablecloth and real china plates. Wade ordered a feast roast chicken, potatoes, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. As they ate, he entertained them with stories about the early days of Oro Blanco, when the town was little more than a collection of tents around the first silver strike. "I arrived just as the boom was beginning," he told them. "Worked the mines for a while, but I never had the fever for silver. Land was what called to me, good, solid earth that would produce year after year." "You made a wise choice," Madeline said, watching as he helped Eliza cut her chicken into manageable pieces. "Silver runs out eventually, but a well-managed ranch can last generations." His eyes met hers over the table. "That's my hope, to build something that will outlast me, something I can pass on." The words hung between them, full of meaning neither was ready to articulate fully. Madeline looked away first, focusing on helping Emma with her milk. After lunch, they walked to the edge of town where a large tent had been erected. Colorful flags fluttered from its peaks, and the sounds of a small brass band drifted on the air. The twins could barely contain their excitement, skipping ahead and then running back, urging the adults to hurry. The show was modest by Eastern standards, but magical to children who had never seen such entertainment. Acrobats tumbled and twisted. A man juggled flaming torches. Trained dogs performed clever tricks, and musicians played lively tunes that had the audience clapping along. The twins sat entranced, their eyes wide with wonder, occasionally grabbing Madeline's hand in excitement. Watching them, Madeline felt a surge of gratitude so strong it brought tears to her eyes. Without Wade's generosity, her daughters might never have experienced such simple joys. They might still be hungry, afraid, running from town to town. Wade, seated beside her, noticed her emotion. "Are you all right?" he whispered, his hand finding hers in the dim light of the tent. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Instead, she squeezed his hand, hoping he could feel her gratitude, her affection, all the emotions she couldn't yet put into words. His fingers tightened around hers, warm and steadying. They remained that way through the rest of the show, connected by this simple touch that somehow said more than words could express. As they left the tent, blinking in the late afternoon sunlight, the twins bubbled with excitement, recounting their favorite parts of the show. Wade suggested a visit to the dressmaker before heading back to the ranch, and soon Madeline found herself standing on a stool while the seamstress took measurements for new dresses. 3 of the blue, Wade instructed. 1 fancy, 2 everyday, and whatever the little ladies need. The dressmaker, a brisk woman named Mrs. Turner, nodded approvingly. "You've a good eye for color, Mr. Jennings. This blue will complement Miss Dawson's eyes beautifully." Madeline blushed under Wade's appreciative gaze. "1 dress would be plenty," she protested weakly. "Nonsense, Mrs." Turner replied before Wade could respond. "A lady needs options, especially one as pretty as yourself, and growing girls need sturdy clothes." She measured the twins efficiently, making notes in a small book. "I can have everything ready in 2 weeks. Will that suit?" Wade confirmed the arrangement while Madeline helped the girls back into their shoes. The entire day had taken on a dreamlike quality: the fine meal, the circus, now new dresses being commissioned as if such luxuries were commonplace. As they prepared to leave, Mrs. Turner pulled Madeline aside. "You're a fortunate woman, Miss Dawson. Mr. Jennings is the finest man in the territory." Before Madeline could clarify their relationship, the seamstress continued. "I've known him since he first came to Oro Blanco. Never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." The simple observation stayed with Madeline as they drove back to the ranch, the twins eventually falling asleep against her, exhausted from the day's excitement. The sun was setting, painting the desert landscape in shades of gold and purple. "Thank you for today," she said softly to Wade. "It meant the world to the girls." "And to you?" he asked, glancing at her. "Yes," she admitted. "To me as well." They drove in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the creak of the wagon and the twins' soft breathing. "Wade," Madeline began, gathering her courage. "There are things I should tell you, about why I left St. Louis, about my past." He kept his eyes on the road, giving her space to continue at her own pace. "I'm listening." Madeline took a deep breath. "I told you the twins' father is dead. That's true in a way. But it's more complicated than that." She paused, checking that the girls were still asleep. "I was 17 when I married Charles Blackwell. He was 45, a wealthy businessman in St. Louis. My father arranged the match. We were in financial difficulty, and Charles offered to clear my father's debts in exchange for my hand." Wade's hands tightened on the reins, but he said nothing. "The first year wasn't terrible. Charles was distant but not unkind. When I discovered I was carrying twins, I hoped it might bring us closer, but after they were born—" Madeline swallowed hard. "He changed. Became controlling, then cruel. He drank heavily. When the girls were 3, he beat me severely enough that I feared for my life. While I was recovering, I learned something even worse." She faltered, the memories still painful despite the passing years. "You don't have to continue," Wade said gently. "No, I need to." Madeline steeled herself. "I discovered Charles had made arrangements to sell the girls to separate them and send them to different schools back east. In reality, these were places where young children were trained for unsuitable purposes. When I confronted him, he admitted he'd never wanted children, especially girls. He saw them as a means to profit and nothing more." Wade's jaw clenched visibly, but he kept his focus on the road. "That night, I took what money I could find in his study and fled with the twins. We traveled west, Changing our names, the girl's birth name was Blackwell, not Dawson. For 2 years, we moved from town to town, always afraid he would find us. Madeline's voice dropped lower. 6 months before we arrived in Oro Blanco, I saw a newspaper article. Charles had died in a fire at his warehouse. Only then did I feel safe enough to stay in one place. But by then, our money was gone. She fell silent, waiting for Wade's response, fearing judgment or disbelief. After a long moment, he spoke. "You did what any mother would do to protect her children. There's no shame in that, Madeline." Relief washed over her. "You don't think less of me for lying about my name, for running." "Think less of you." Wade turned to her, his expression fierce in the fading light. "I admire your courage. To leave everything behind to keep your daughters safe despite all hardships, that takes extraordinary strength." His words loosened something that had been tightly bound within her for years. Tears spilled down her cheeks, tears she had never allowed herself to shed during the long months of fear and flight. Wade stopped the wagon, setting the brake before turning to her fully. "Madeline, nothing you've told me changes how I feel about you. If anything, it only confirms what I already knew, that you are a remarkable woman, one I would be proud to have by my side for the rest of my days." She looked at him through her tears, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "Wade, are you asking you to marry me?" "Yes, I suppose I am." He smiled, reaching out to brush away a tear from her cheek. "Not very romantically, I'm afraid, with sleeping children between us and the sun nearly gone. But I love you, Madeline Dawson, or Blackwell, or whatever name you choose. I love your daughters as if they were my own, and I want to give you all a home where you never have to be afraid again." Madeline's heart felt too full to contain all she was feeling. "You're certain, even knowing everything?" "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Wade took her hand, his thumb stroking her palm gently. "But I don't expect an answer right now. Take whatever time you need." She looked down at their joined hands, then at her sleeping daughters, then back at this man who had changed their lives so profoundly. In that moment, the answer was clear. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I'll marry you, Wade Jennings." His smile was like the sunrise, breaking slow and warm across his face. He leaned across the sleeping twins to kiss her, a brief, sweet promise of all that was to come. "We should get home," he said finally, releasing her hand to take up the reins again. "Mrs. Hayes will be wondering where we've been." Home. The word echoed in Madeline's heart as they continued toward Silver Creek Ranch. After years of running, of uncertainty, of fear, she had found not just shelter but a true home with this man who looked at her past without judgment and offered her a future filled with promise. As the lights of the ranch came into view, Madeline sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. She had walked into Oro Blanco with empty pockets and twin daughters to feed, expecting nothing more than temporary work. Instead, she had found love, security, and the chance for a new beginning, fullness in every sense of the word. The news of their engagement spread quickly through the ranch, and then to Oro Blanco. Mrs. Hayes was the first to know, greeting their announcement with tears and declarations that she'd seen it coming from the first week. "About time you settled down," she told Wade, patting his cheek affectionately. "And you couldn't have chosen better." The twins took the news with childish enthusiasm, especially when Wade explained that he would be their new papa. "Does that mean we'll live here forever?" Emma asked, her eyes wide. "Yes," Wade assured her. "This will always be your home. And we can keep our ponies." Eliza wanted to know, priorities clear in her 5-year-old mind. Wade laughed, swinging her up into his arms. "Of course. And maybe someday you'll have your own proper horses, when you're bigger." The ranch hands offered congratulations with awkward sincerity, clearly pleased for their boss but uncertain how to express it. The foreman, Miguel, a man of few words who had worked for Wade since the beginning, simply shook his hand and said, "Good." The house needed a woman's touch and children's laughter. In town, the response was equally positive. Mrs. Peterson, who had hosted them their first night in Oro Blanco, insisted on hosting an engagement dinner. "It's not every day our most eligible bachelor decides to marry," she declared. "We must celebrate properly." Madeline was touched by the genuine welcome she received from the townspeople. Many had barely spoken to her during her brief time in town, yet now they greeted her warmly, offering congratulations and invitations. She realized that Wade's standing in the community extended to her and the twins by association. "They're curious about you," Wade explained as they drove home from one such gathering. "Most women who come west are already married, or they're coming to join family. A young widow with twins, now engaged to the owner of the largest ranch in the area, it's natural they'd be interested." "I'm not really a widow," Madeline reminded him quietly. "As far as anyone here needs to know, you are," Wade replied firmly. "Your past is yours to share or keep private as you choose." His understanding was just one more reason Madeline found herself falling deeper in love with each passing day. Wade never pressed her for details about her former life, never questioned her decisions, never suggested the twins were anything but a blessing he was honored to help raise. They set a wedding date for early May, when the spring roundup would be complete, and before the summer heat made outdoor celebrations uncomfortable. Mrs. Peterson, Mrs. Hayes, and several other women from town took charge of the arrangements, determined to give Oro Blanco's most prominent citizen a wedding worthy of the occasion. "Nothing too elaborate," Madeline protested when Mrs. Hayes showed her the growing guest list. "Something simple would be more appropriate." "Nonsense," Mrs. Hayes replied briskly. "This is the first time Wade's opened his heart since coming west. We're going to celebrate properly." As the weeks passed, Madeline found herself swept along by the preparations. The dresses Wade had ordered from Mrs. Turner were delivered simple but elegant everyday dresses in the blue fabric, and one more formal gown that would serve as her wedding dress. The twins received new frocks as well, with matching ribbons for their copper curls. "You'll be the prettiest flower girls Oro Blanco has ever seen," Mrs. Peterson told them, supervising a fitting in her parlor. Emma preened at the compliment while Eliza asked seriously, "What do flower girls do?" "You'll walk ahead of your mama, scattering flower petals for her to walk on," Mrs. Peterson explained. "It's a very important job." The twins took this responsibility to heart, practicing their petal scattering technique in the ranch yard until Mrs. Hayes complained about finding flower petals in her wash water. April brought the spring roundup, taking Wade away from the ranch for long days, as he and his men gathered cattle from the far reaches of his land. Madeline missed their evening conversations, but understood the demands of ranch life. When he returned each night, exhausted and dusty, she had hot water waiting for him to wash and a late supper kept warm in the oven. "You don't have to wait up for me," he told her one night, finding her reading by lamplight in the parlor well past midnight. "I know," she replied simply. "But I want to." The day before the wedding, Wade's best friend and nearest neighbor, Thomas Reed, arrived with his wife Sarah and their 3 children. Thomas would stand as Wade's best man, while Sarah had agreed to be Madeline's matron of honor, despite having only met her a few times during visits to Silver Creek. "Any woman who can put that look in Wade's eyes is a friend of mine," Sarah declared, embracing Madeline warmly. "Besides, it's about time he found happiness. He's been alone too long." The Reeds' children, 2 boys aged 10 and 8, and a girl of 6 immediately befriended the twins, drawing them into games in the ranch yard. Watching them play, Madeline felt a new contentment. Her daughters, who had known only fear and uncertainty for so much of their young lives, were now secure enough to laugh and play without looking over their shoulders. That evening, after a festive dinner with the Reeds and several other early arrivals from town, Wade found Madeline on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Having second thoughts, he asked, only half joking. She turned to him with a smile. Not one. You. Only about letting Mrs. Peterson invite half the territory. He moved to stand beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. I would have been happy with just you, the twins, and Reverend Michaels. It means a lot to them to see you settled, Madeline observed. You're important to this community, Wade. He shrugged, uncomfortable with the acknowledgement. They've been good neighbors, it's mutual. After a pause, he added, I have something for you, a wedding gift. From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a ring, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, set in gold. It was my mother's, he explained as Madeline gasped. My father gave it to her when they'd been married 20 years. I've kept it, hoping someday I might have someone special to give it to. With gentle fingers, he slid the ring onto Madeline's left hand where it fit as if made for her. Perfect, he murmured. Madeline stared at the ring, tears blurring her vision. It's beautiful. I'll treasure it always. There's more, Wade said, his voice deepening with emotion. I've had papers drawn up. After we're married, I want to legally adopt Emma and Eliza. They'll have my name, inherit equally with any children we might have together. They'll be Jennings in every way that matters. Madeline's tears spilled over. This was a gift beyond price security for her daughters that went beyond material comfort. It meant that even if something happened to her, the twins would be protected, would have a father who loved them and legal standing in society. Wade, I don't know how to thank you, he silenced her with a gentle finger to her lips. No thanks needed. They're already my daughters in my heart. This just makes it official in the eyes of the law. Madeline rose on tiptoe to kiss him, pouring all her gratitude, all her love into the gesture. When they parted, both were breathless. One more day, Wade whispered against her hair. One more day and you'll be my wife. I already am, Madeline replied softly, in every way that truly matters. The wedding day dawned clear and warm, a perfect May morning in the Arizona territory. Silver Creek Ranch had been transformed, the yard swept and decorated with wildflowers, tables set up beneath the old oak tree, ribbons and lanterns hanging from branches. Ranch hands in their Sunday best directed arriving guests, while Mrs. Hayes supervised an army of helpers in the kitchen. In the upstairs bedroom, Sarah Reed helped Madeline dress. The wedding gown was simple but elegant, pale blue silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, fitted at the waist and flowing gracefully to the floor. You look radiant, Sarah said, arranging Madeline's dark hair in a simple style adorned with white flowers. Wade won't be able to take his eyes off you. Madeline smiled, a slight nervousness fluttering in her stomach. Not about marrying Wade, she had no doubts there, but about being the center of attention for so many people. I've never had such a fine dress before, and it suits you perfectly. Sarah adjusted the flowers one last time. There, ready to become Mrs. Wade Jennings. The name sent a thrill through Madeline. Mrs. Jennings. A real name, a respectable name, one she could claim without fear. The twins burst into the room then, already dressed in their new frocks of pale yellow, hair tied back with matching ribbons. "Mama," Emma exclaimed, "you look like a princess." "The prettiest mama ever," Eliza agreed solemnly. Madeline knelt to embrace them both, careful not to crush their dresses. "And you are the prettiest flower girls any bride could ask for." Are you ready to do your important job? They nodded eagerly, clutching their small baskets of flower petals. Thomas Reed's daughter, Lucy, had been showing them exactly how to scatter the petals, not too many at once, but enough to make a pretty path. A knock at the door announced Mrs. Hayes. "Everyone's seated," she reported. "Reverend Michaels is ready whenever you are." Taking a deep breath, Madeline stood. "Then I'm ready." The ceremony was held in the garden behind the house, where Wade had built a simple arch decorated with wildflowers and ribbons. Chairs had been arranged in rows, filled now with well-wishers from the ranch and town. At the front stood Wade, tall and handsome in a new black suit, his face solemn until he caught sight of the twins coming down the aisle, scattering petals with focused determination. His smile then was bright enough to rival the sun. When Madeline appeared at the end of the aisle, a murmur went through the assembled guests. She carried a bouquet of wildflowers tied with blue ribbon, her cheeks flushed with happiness. With no father or brother to give her away, she walked alone, a symbol of the independence that had brought her to this moment. Wade's eyes never left her as she approached. When she reached him, he took her hand, his grip warm and steady. "You're beautiful," he whispered. Reverend Michaels, a kind-faced man with silver hair, began the ceremony with words about love, commitment, and building a life together. Madeline heard them as if from a distance, her attention focused on Wade, on the look in his eyes that spoke of promises beyond those they were about to make verbally. When it came time for the vows, Wade's voice rang clear and strong. "I, Wade Jennings, take you, Madeline Dawson, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part." Madeline's voice trembled slightly as she repeated the same words, emotion making it difficult to speak. When Wade slid the gold band onto her finger to join her mother's sapphire ring, she felt a sense of completion, of rightness that brought fresh tears to her eyes. "By the power vested in me," Reverend Michaels concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Wade's kiss was gentle but full of promise, appropriate for the public setting but conveying his deeper feelings. When they turned to face their guests, now officially husband and wife, the applause was enthusiastic. The twins rushed forward to embrace them both, turning the moment into a family celebration. The reception lasted well into the evening. Tables groaned under the weight of food: roasted beef, chicken, ham, every vegetable the kitchen garden could produce, breads, pies, and a magnificent wedding cake made by Mrs. Peterson herself. Music came from a small band assembled from town, with Wade's fiddle making an appearance for a special dance with his new bride. As night fell, lanterns were lit, casting a warm glow over the continuing celebration. Madeline found a moment to slip away to check on the twins, who had fallen asleep on a bench beneath the oak tree, exhausted from excitement and play. "Should we put them to bed?" Wade asked, coming up behind her and slipping an arm around her waist. Madeline leaned into him, savoring the right to do so openly. "In a little while, they're comfortable enough for now." They stood together, watching their sleeping daughters, the sounds of music and laughter providing a pleasant backdrop. "Happy?" Wade asked softly. "More than I ever thought possible." Madeline turned in his arms to face him. "When I walked into Oro Blanco that day, I had nothing, no money, no hope, just two hungry children depending on me. And now you have everything," Wade finished for her. "A home, security, a community, and a husband who loves you beyond measure. And the twins have a father who will protect them, cherish them." Madeline touched his face gently. "You've given us so much, Wade." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "You've given me just as much, a family, purpose beyond work, joy. His eyes darkened with emotion. I never expected to find love again at my age. Never thought I'd have children to raise, to pass on this land to. You and the girls have made Silver Creek a true home, not just a place I built. As the celebration continued around them, Madeline and Wade remained in their private moment, two people who had found each other against all odds. The path that had brought Madeline to Oro Blanco had been difficult, marked by fear and hardship. But standing in her husband's arms, with her daughters sleeping peacefully nearby, she knew every step had been leading her here, to this perfect fullness of heart. Epilogue. 5 years later, the summer sun beat down on Silver Creek Ranch, turning the fields golden and the creek to a lazy ribbon of silver. From the shade of the porch, Madeline watched as Wade instructed Emma and Eliza in the proper way to saddle a horse. At 10 years old, the twins were accomplished riders, but today they were learning the responsibilities that came with their new mounts, proper full-sized horses, rather than the ponies they'd outgrown. "Keep the cinch tight, but not so tight it pinches," Wade was saying, his patient tone carrying clearly across the yard. "Remember, your horse is your partner. Treat them with respect and they'll do the same for you." Emma nodded seriously, her copper curls so like her sister's escaping from her braid in the summer heat. Eliza asked a question Madeline couldn't quite hear, and Wade's answer made both girls laugh. The sound of a small voice behind her drew Madeline's attention. "Mama, look, I drawed a picture." 3-year-old William Wade Jennings, named for both his father and grandfather, held up a piece of paper covered in colorful scrawls. His dark hair, Wade's hair, fell across his forehead as he looked up at her eagerly. "It's beautiful, Will," Madeline praised, lifting him onto her lap. "Tell me about it. It's our house, and there's Papa and Emmy and Lisa and the horses and me and you and baby Rose in your tummy." He pointed to each figure with a chubby finger. Madeline smiled, resting a hand on her rounded belly. At 7 months along, the baby whom Will had decided must be named Rose was active, kicking frequently as if impatient to join the family. "You're a wonderful artist," she told him, pressing a kiss to his warm head. "Should we show Papa when he's finished with the girls' lesson?" Will nodded enthusiastically, then wiggled down from her lap to continue his artistic efforts at the small table Wade had built especially for him. Watching him, Madeline felt the familiar wave of gratitude that still came over her regularly, even after 5 years of marriage. Silver Creek Ranch had prospered under Wade's management, expanding to include additional grazing lands and a small apple orchard that had been Madeline's project. The main house had been enlarged to accommodate their growing family, with a proper schoolroom where the twins studied with a tutor 3 days a week, supplementing their attendance at the Oro Blanco school the other 2 days. The town itself had grown as well, now boasting a proper church, a bank, and even a small newspaper. Wade served on the town council, helping to guide Oro Blanco's development with the same careful stewardship he applied to the ranch. Life wasn't without challenges. The harsh environment still presented difficulties, drought some years, flooding others. There had been a difficult period when rustlers had targeted ranches in the area, including Silver Creek. And Madeline had suffered a miscarriage between Will and this pregnancy, a loss that had shadowed them both for months. But through it all, the foundation Wade had promised, that first Christmas love, security, family, had remained solid. The twins had blossomed into confident, intelligent girls who excelled in their studies and were equally at home helping with ranch work or attending social events in town. They called Wade Papa without hesitation. The memories of their early hardships faded but not forgotten. Mrs. Hayes still ruled the kitchen, though she now had more help, a young woman from town who came daily, and Madeline herself when household duties allowed. The older woman had become like a grandmother to the children, spoiling them with cookies and stories while maintaining the discipline necessary in a busy household. Wade came up the porch steps, wiping sweat from his brow. At 48, his hair had more silver than brown now, and the lines around his eyes had deepened. But to Madeline, he was more handsome than ever. She knew his body intimately now, the scar on his shoulder from a Minier ball at Gettysburg, the strong hands that could be so gentle with their children, the arms that still held her close each night. "The girls are natural horsewomen," he reported, dropping into the chair beside her. "They'll be ready to help with the roundup next spring if they keep learning at this rate." "They have an excellent teacher," Madeline replied, reaching for his hand. Wade smiled, the special smile he reserved for her alone. "How are you feeling today? And the little one?" He placed his free hand on her belly, rewarded immediately by a strong kick. "Active. Mrs. Hayes says that means a girl with spirit." "Like her mother," Wade said, his eyes warm with love. "And her sisters." Will appeared then, proudly displaying his artwork to his father. Wade examined it with the same serious attention he gave to ranch ledgers or cattle breeding records. "Excellent work, son," he pronounced finally. "You've captured everyone perfectly. Should we hang it in my study?" Will beamed with pride. "Yes, next to Emmy's horse picture." As Wade took their son inside to find a suitable spot for his masterpiece, Madeline's gaze returned to the twins, now brushing down their horses with confidence and care. Beyond them, the land stretched out, the pastures, the creek, the distant mountains, all part of the legacy that would one day be theirs. She thought back to that dusty day when she had walked into Oro Blanco with nothing but her daughters and desperate hope. How far they had come since then, how full their lives had become. Wade returned, Will riding on his shoulders, chattering about where his picture would look best. Seeing her expression, he paused. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Jennings." Madeline smiled up at her husband and son. "I was just thinking about Fullness," she said softly, "and how sometimes it finds you when you least expect it." Wade's eyes held hers, understanding without need for further explanation. "The best things often do," he replied, reaching down to touch her cheek gently. The baby kicked again, as if in agreement, and Madeline laughed. Around them, Silver Creek Ranch continued its daily rhythm, the twins with their horses, ranch hands calling to each other as they worked the herd in the distance. Mrs. Hayes's voice from the kitchen announcing that lemonade was ready for anyone who wanted it. This was fullness not just of bread and comfort, but of love and purpose and belonging. It was everything Madeline had stopped believing was possible in those dark days of running and fear. Everything she had found in the arms of a cowboy with kind eyes and a generous heart. Everything that had begun the day she walked into Oro Blanco with twins and empty pockets. And a man named Wade Jennings had offered them water, cookies, and a future brighter than she could have imagined.